So folks, today we're going to be looking at levers. This is quite a big topic on the GCSE and will be needed for next year as well. So what is a lever? Levers use mechanical advantage, so that's the ratio of force produced compared to the force applied, to make lifting or applying pressure easier. All levers are made of a bar and a pivot called a fulcrum, and levers have three main parts. So, levers usually a rigid rod pivoted around a fixed axis called a fulcrum, used to change the direction or the motion of force, to increase or reduce the amount of force going to the thing that needs lifted. So, the three main parts are your fulcrum, so that is your pivot. The load, so that's the thing you're trying to move or change direction of, and the effort, so that's the amount of force you're putting into it. So, fulcrum, where the lever pivots. Load, the weight that needs to be moved, also referred to as the output. So, your output will always need to be moved, and that's why it's called the load. And the effort is the amount of force applied by the user, also referred to as the input. There are three different classes of levers, chosen on their ability to produce the most mechanical advantage. You have class 1 or first class, second class and third class. So it's just the way the fulcrum is positioned in the whole thing. So it goes effort, fulcrum, load in first class. So the fulcrum is in the middle. Effort, load, fulcrum. The fulcrum is the last point in class 2 levers. And fulcrum, effort, load in third class. Third class you won't be using as much. It's usually first and second, but you need to be able to identify examples of all of them and be able to identify exactly where the fulcrum is in all of them. Class 1 places the fulcrum between the effort and the load. An example would be a seesaw. So it goes up and down, based on the weight on either end. And as it's equally weighted, it will balance. If the load closer to the fulcrum becomes easier to lift when the fulcrum is in the centre, like a seesaw, the effort and the load will have equal to balance. So examples of your levers, giving you examples because you need to know them. So you have your claw hammer, your seesaw and your crowbar. Crowbar is an example of class 1 lever that puts a load closer to the fulcrum. This gives more power to move the load. So if the fulcrum's closer to the load, it makes it easier to move it. Right, class 2, fulcrum is at one end of it. The load is in the middle, and the effort is at the other end. The closer together the fulcrum and the load are, the easier it is to lift the load. That is why a wheelbarrow has its wheel very, very close to where the load needs to be. A class 3 places the effort between the fulcrum and the load. If the effort and the fulcrum are further apart, it becomes easier to lift. Third class lever does not have the mechanical advantage of first or second. That is why they're less common. When this form of lever is operated, the effort force always diminishes or basically decreases, but the distance moved is magnified, so there's more moved, but the effort, the amount of force you put into it, is always decreased. Generally for using small or delicate items, tweezers, fishing rods, things like that. So it's just moving a very small thing, moving very, very small delicate items. So a piece of fishing wire or ripping hairs out, things like that. Very, very delicate things.